Hi guys, I hope you're thriving and practicing radical self-care. If you're interested in this content, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in private coaching, please go to www.coachcatwithak.org. So in this video, I don't have any notes. I'm just kind of going off the cuff. What I'm going to talk about is some of the feelings that you may be experiencing when you get out of one of these relationships and what survivors will often sort of go through, and some tips on how to practice self-care and introspection when you get out of a narcissistic relationship. So if you're in a relationship, I would say especially with a covert narcissist where the sort of abuse is very subtle, it's under the radar, it's psychological, it's emotional, sometimes verbal, but it's not obvious. And you might not even be aware that you are in a covertly abusive relationship. And that may be because you might have grown up in a family where your boundaries were violated, or you might have developed some of the codependent characteristics, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which is people pleasing, accommodating, being under the radar, saying yes when you really mean no, not setting healthy boundaries. Like you might have developed some of these coping mechanisms to survive your childhood experience. And so when you meet somebody who is a psychological and emotional manipulator, you might not be aware that that is what's happening, especially if you equate abuse to physical abuse or overt verbal abuse. Like if you grew up in a childhood where there was like yelling or hitting or violence, the covert manipulator might appear to be the opposite, right? And so sometimes you can be in these relationships for a really long time and you might not have any idea that that's actually what you're dealing with because you don't recognize it as abuse. You don't recognize things like silent treatment, stonewalling, withholding of sex, affection, compliments, information, controlling the finances, keeping your name off assets. If you're married, you might not notice all of these sort of subtle forms of abuse and manipulation. You might be dealing with somebody who's profoundly passive aggressive and everything they do is under the radar. So you're not aware of what is happening. It's the analogy of a frog being boiled in water. You might not equate severe neglect, relationship neglect, with abuse. But, especially if you're with like a neglectful covert narcissist, they just starve you out. They manage you down to a point where you're, grateful to get a short phone conversation with them while they're on the road, working and cheating or doing whatever they're doing. They may manage you down to where you're doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping, all the child care. You feel like you're, a single parent in the relationship. A lot of people report that, or, you're doing all the planning, all the packing for trips and, initiating all of the work in the sort of homestead of the relationship. And sometimes you're with somebody who all they have to do is go to work and that's all they do. And, you think they're going to work and they might actually be having affairs and going to strip clubs or picking up on prostitutes or watching pornography or whatever they're doing, right? So you might have no idea that you're actually in an abusive relationship. And so a lot of times what happens is, you'll get hit by a Mack truck, and all of a sudden the person that you knew, and if they're covert, you could have been with them for 10, 15 years and you thought everything was fine because they never told you that there was any problem. They never communicated directly and honestly that there was any issues that they had, but everything was a subtle covert manipulation. And you might get hit by a Mack truck when you discover their double life and that they're having an affair, or they're, cheating on you or doing whatever they're doing, right? And a lot of people report just being absolutely shell-shocked. They have no idea what they're dealing with. And then you see a mask come off and you don't recognize the person that you've been with. They are not the same person, and you do not recognize, and you see that the truth is that they have contempt for you, and they have contempt for your family, and they have contempt for your friends. And these are all people that they professed or acted like they liked when they were in the relationship with you, right? That's all part of their performance. That's all part of their mask. That's all part of their, what they're sending to, sort of uphold their mask of perfection. So if that happened to you, you're going to have a really difficult time probably with the cognitive dissonance, because you're having a hard time reconciling in your mind, like the person that they turned out to be with the person that you thought they were, right? And it can be such a dichotomy and such a gap that you can't reconcile it. And this may have been somebody who presented to be somebody of great moral integrity. That's the mask they sent of a saint, almost like a halo around their head, the halo effect, right? And they could have just presented to be just a saint, and you are absolutely in shock. And that cognitive dissonance and what that does to your mind and your brain and your nervous system is very difficult to deal with. And then you may go through phases of, sort of rationalizing their behaviors and minimizing them. And then you might come to this place where you start getting into acceptance. And I think one thing that's really key is to step into reality. And you can do that by making a list of all of the things that they did. And I don't care if these are the things they did during the 10 years you were together or more during the discard, but make the list. Did they gaslight? Did they manipulate? Did they refuse to tell the truth? Did they refuse to take any personal responsibility? Did they not apologize? Did they not, acknowledge where they were wrong? Did they, have an oversensitivity to criticism? Did they use all sorts of passive-aggressive, covert manipulation tactics with you? Did they try to destroy you financially during a divorce? Did they financially control the money? Did they withhold information? Did they withhold compliments? Did they withhold affection? Did they withhold sex? Did they withhold intimacy? All of these things. Did they act superior and smug, like they were smarter than everyone, the other 7 billion people on the planet? I mean, did they do these things? And make a list. Did they say they were going to be did their actions not match their words? These are all things that you really need to, not need to, but I suggest that you make a list so you can get really clear on who this person actually is, not the fantasy of who you thought they were in your head, not the fantasy that they present to the world, not the image, not the fake mask of perfection that they send to the world. That is a lie. That's not a real person. That's a paper mache cardboard cutout. And underneath it, they're probably quite duplicitous. They're probably very cruel people, very cold, very lacking in empathy. So make the list. And when you start getting into fantasy and missing them and, sort of thinking about, oh, but they were this or they were that. When you start doing that, I suggest that you pull the list out and start looking at it and being like, oh yeah, they lied, they cheated, they gaslight, they lied to the therapist, they withheld information, they withheld sex, they controlled the finances, they hid finances, they were lied during, a divorce or whatever they did that was egregious. They abandoned their children, they abandoned their spouse, they discarded people in their lives, they moved on as if they had no reaction to dissolution of a 20, 30, 40-year marriage. That is not normal. You should have feelings. If you're leaving a long-term relationship, you should have a lot of feelings. You should have feelings of anger. You should have feelings of sadness, of grief. If you're a real human in touch with your empathy, you should have some feelings. So anyone that acts like they don't have any feelings when there's an end of a long-term relationship, I am very skeptical around those people, because I'm like, oh, you have no feelings and you just ended a 20-year marriage. Wow, that's kind of frightening to me, actually. It's more frightening to me than somebody who's upset, sad, angry, crying, grieving. That's normal. That's human. Thank God. We can be human. So, in this video, I'm just really talking about getting in touch with, those feelings that you have around this, and honor your feelings. You don't need to act out. You don't need to do inappropriate things based on your feelings. You don't need to react, but you can and should absolutely get in touch with how you're actually feeling. This is key to healing, in my opinion. And you walk through it with your eyes wide open, and you walk through the grief, you walk through the loss, you walk through the sadness, you walk through the anger, you walk through it. And what I believe is you will get over onto the other side. I have a very wise mentor that says, God does not close one door without opening another, but sometimes it's hell in the hallway. And if you're coming out of one of these relationships, it's hell in the hallway, but you're going to get over onto the other side. And, I can also speak on some excellent gifts that you may be able to walk away from this relationship with, some excellent gifts. The silver lining. The silver lining, here's a few things. One thing is, you are probably going to learn some healthy boundaries, because you will probably start facing some codependent behaviors where you didn't set healthy boundaries. And I encourage you to really do a deep dive and start learning how to set boundaries. And the more you say no, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Set healthy boundaries. You practice radical self-care. You take great care of yourself. The more you do that, and you say no to people that are toxic and you get them out of your life quickly, the more you do that, the greater your self-esteem is going to increase, because you're doing this beautiful thing, which is radical self-care. You're learning to parent that little kid that was abandoned, abused, neglected, or whatever, that developed these codependent strategies in order to navigate your childhood. So you can learn really healthy boundaries. You can learn discernment. And so you don't let people into your world that are toxic. And as soon as they start showing the red flags, you can exit those situations, and you can allow people into your space and be intimate with people that are truly kind and have empathy and are loving and are wonderful. You can also learn to, one thing that I've learned is that, and I already knew this, but I really learned it through this experience that I went through, is that there are 7 billion of us on the planet, and we all have different minds, different emotions, different feelings, different thoughts. And really, I think I used to sort of do that thing where I thought people were more like me than maybe they actually are. And so after studying narcissism, I realized narcissists don't think like codependents or empaths think. They don't think nothing like them. They're very self-serving. They're exploitative. They're very selfish. They only think what's in it for me. They don't really think about other people, not in the way that empaths do. And so, you can learn to see that people are going to experience this world very differently than you, and they're going to think very differently, and they're going to have different emotions. And, I think as empaths, codependent empaths, not that they're always both things, but I think if you can start learning that, there's some people in this world that are going to try to exploit others to get their needs met. And they're going to use manipulation, and they're going to use all sorts of duplicitous strategies to get their needs met. Whether they know they're doing it or not is almost irrelevant. Doesn't really matter that much. It matters that they do it. So if that's the case, then my job is to protect myself from those people. And I don't have to be in a relationship with users, abusers, takers, and manipulators. I just don't. There are people in this world who are givers. And if you're a giver, I suggest you surround yourself with other givers. Because if you're both giving in a relationship and you have this this reciprocity where you're both giving, you're on the same team, you're feeding each other, you're nurturing each other, you're telling each other the truth about what your needs are so the other person can meet them. We don't do mind reading. That's only in narcissistic relationships, well, for the most part, where somebody expects you to read their mind. I don't expect people to read my mind in relationships. It's my job to tell them what my needs are, and they can say one of three things. They can say, yes, I can meet that need. No, I can't meet that need, or I don't know if I can meet it, but I'm willing to try, or I don't know if I can meet it, and I'm not willing to try. And then you get to choose. If they won't meet your need, then is that a deal killer? Or are you okay with the maybe? So that's up to you, but there's only really 3 answers that I can think of to, here's my need, can you meet it? And if they say they can meet it and then they have a continued pattern of behavior of not meeting your need, then their actions don't match their words. Notice that. If you say, hey, I'd like to have sex on a more regular basis, instead of once every 4 months, I'd like to have it once or twice a week, and they say they want that too, and then they don't do it, and they don't participate in it, or they reject you when you try to initiate, that is actions not matching words. That is not a person of integrity. They are not, their actions are not following their words. So definitely pay attention to that. If you say, hey, I need to be able to communicate with you on a more consistent fashion. I want to be able to reach you when I'm trying to reach you via text or email or phone call. If I can't reach you, if you go dark, that's very unsettling to me. It's very triggering to me. And if the person says, okay, no problem, yes, I will meet that need, and then they don't do it, again, action not matching words. So be really pay close attention to where people's actions and words, are they in alignment? And of course, somebody could have 10 years of showing that most of the time their actions match their words, and every once in a while they screw up, and that's understandable. But if there's a pattern of behavior where their actions do not match their words, that is something to really pay attention to. And then another thing that you may have learned after getting out of one of these relationships is to trust your intuition. Listen to your gut. What is your body telling you? If your body, if somebody's talking to you and they have a silver tongue and they are saying everything you want to hear, but your body is telling you that there's something off about that person, there's something not right about them, there's something that's not right, that doesn't sit right with you, I suggest you listen to that. And you don't have to have a dossier on them. You don't have to have a file cabinet of, what about them is off. You can actually just listen to your gut and go, you know what, my gut is telling me there's something not right about this situation. There's something off about this person. And that, my dear friends, is enough reason for you to distance yourself from that person right then and there. It really is. So I hope this is helpful, but those are some things you can learn and how to practice radical self-care after these relationships. You've spent your whole time focusing on the needs of the narcissist. Now it's time to focus on your own needs, to focus on nourishing yourself, radical self-care, feeding yourself, getting plenty of water, loving and caring and cherishing yourself. So I hope you're thriving and having a wonderful day. And again, practicing radical self-care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.